The blizzard hit Tombstone, Arizona, like the fist of an angry god, and Natalie Owens knew with absolute certainty that she would die here if she didn't find shelter in the next 10 minutes. Her fingers had gone numb an hour ago, her horse had thrown a shoe 2 miles back, and the snow was coming down so thick she could barely see 3 feet ahead. This wasn't supposed to happen. Arizona was supposed to be desert and heat and endless sun. She'd planned everything so carefully, saved every penny from 3 years of working in that San Francisco boarding house, waited for the perfect moment when Thomas would be away on business. She'd left him a note on the kitchen table, short and final, packed a single carpet bag, and boarded the first train heading anywhere that wasn't California. Tombstone had seemed like a good place to disappear, to reinvent herself, to finally be free. Now she was going to freeze to death in the Arizona territory, because nature had decided to play a cruel joke. The wind howled around her, cutting through her wool traveling coat like it was made of paper. Her horse, a steady mare she'd bought in Tucson, stumbled again, and Natalie felt tears freezing on her cheeks. She should have stayed in Tucson. She should have waited out the strange cold snap everyone had been talking about. But she'd been so desperate to keep moving, to put as much distance as possible between herself and Thomas O'Brien, the man she'd been foolish enough to marry when she was 19 years old. Through the white curtain of snow, she saw something dark. A building, maybe a barn. She urged her horse forward, every step feeling like it might be their last. The shape grew larger, more defined. Not a barn, a ranch house with smoke coming from the chimney. Salvation. Natalie half fell from her horse at the porch steps. Her legs wouldn't hold her properly. She stumbled to the door and pounded on it with fists she could no longer feel, praying someone was home, praying they wouldn't turn away a stranger in a storm. The door opened, and warmth rushed out to meet her. A man stood there, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes the color of coffee. He took one look at her and moved immediately, catching her as her knees buckled. "Jesus Christ, you're frozen solid," he said, and his voice was rough but not unkind. "Come on inside now." He half carried her into the house, kicking the door shut behind them. The warmth was almost painful after the brutal cold. Natalie's teeth were chattering so hard she couldn't speak. The man deposited her in a chair near the fireplace and disappeared, returning moments later with blankets. "Your horse?" he asked, already wrapping the blankets around her shoulders. "Outside," she managed through chattering teeth. "Tied to the rail." He nodded and shrugged into a heavy coat. "I'll be right back. Don't move from that fire." Natalie couldn't have moved if her life depended on it. She huddled in the blankets and held her hands as close to the flames as she dared, watching the stranger through the window as he led her horse toward what must be a barn. He moved with easy confidence despite the storm, like he'd weathered worse. By the time he came back inside, shaking snow from his hair, some feeling had returned to Natalie's extremities. The pins and needles sensation was excruciating, but it meant she wasn't going to lose any fingers to frostbite. "Your mare's in the barn, rubbed down and fed," he said, hanging his coat on a peg by the door. "She'll be fine. That shoe she threw is going to need replacing, though." "Thank you," Natalie said, and her voice came out steadier than before. "I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't found your house." "You'd have died," he said bluntly, but not cruelly. "This storm came out of nowhere. I've lived in Arizona my whole life, and I've never seen weather like this." He studied her for a moment, his dark eyes taking in her mud-splattered traveling dress, her carpetbag still clutched in one half-frozen hand. "You running from something or towards something?" The directness of the question startled her. "Is there a difference?" "Usually." He moved to the stove and poured coffee into a tin cup. "Drink this. It'll help warm you from the inside." Natalie accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping both hands around it. The coffee was strong and bitter and absolutely perfect. She took a long sip before answering. "Running from, I suppose. Though I'd rather think of it as running toward something better." He nodded like that made perfect sense. "Name's Owen Frost. This is my ranch, or what's left of it after last summer's drought." "Natalie Owens," she said, and realized too late that she should have given a false name. But she was too tired, too cold, too wrung out to think of a convincing lie. "I was trying to reach Tombstone." "You're about 5 miles from town," Owen said, "but you won't be going anywhere until this storm clears. The way it's coming down out there, we'll be snowed in for at least a couple days." Panic fluttered in Natalie's chest. She couldn't afford to be delayed. Thomas would have found her note by now. He'd be angry, and when Thomas got angry, he got methodical. He'd start looking for her, asking questions, following her trail. Every hour she stayed in one place was an hour he could use to catch up to her. "I need to keep moving," she said. "As soon as possible." Owen raised an eyebrow. "That desperate? You don't understand. Then explain it to me." Natalie set down the coffee cup and pulled the blankets tighter around herself. She didn't owe this man any explanations. He'd saved her life, yes, but that didn't mean she had to bare her soul to him. And yet there was something in his steady gaze, something that made her feel like he might actually understand. "I left my husband," she said quietly. "He's not the kind of man who takes kindly to that." Owen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "He hurt you." "Not with his fists," Natalie said. "Thomas is too refined for that, but there are other ways to hurt someone to make them feel small and powerless and trapped." "Yeah," Owen said softly. "There are." Silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the howl of the wind outside. Natalie studied her rescuer more carefully now. He looked to be in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most, with a weathered face that spoke of long days in the sun. There was a scar above his left eyebrow, and his hands were calloused and strong. A working man's hands. Thomas had never done a day of manual labor in his life. "You can stay here until the storm passes," Owen said finally. "I've got a spare room. You'll be safe." "You don't know me," Natalie pointed out. "I could be anyone. A thief, a criminal, anything." "Could say the same about me," Owen replied with a slight smile. "But I figure anyone desperate enough to be out in that storm isn't looking to cause trouble. They're looking to escape it." He was right, of course, and Natalie was too exhausted to argue. "Thank you. I'll pay you for the room and board." "We can settle up when you leave," Owen said. "For now, you should get out of those wet clothes before you catch pneumonia. I'll find you something dry to wear." He disappeared into another room and returned with a flannel shirt and a pair of wool socks. "The shirt will be big on you, but it's clean and dry. There's a room just through that door. You can change in there." Natalie took the offered clothing and made her way to the spare room on legs that still felt unsteady. It was small but clean, with a narrow bed and a washstand. She peeled off her wet dress and petticoats, her fingers still clumsy with cold, and pulled on the flannel shirt. Owen had been right. It hung to her knees and the sleeves covered her hands completely. But it was warm and soft, and it smelled like wood smoke and soap. When she emerged from the room, Owen had set a pot on the stove. "Hope you like stew," he said. "It's nothing fancy, but it's hot." "It sounds perfect," Natalie said honestly. She couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Breakfast had been a quick piece of bread in Tucson before she'd started riding at dawn. They ate in comfortable silence, and Natalie was surprised to find that she felt more relaxed than she had in months. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or the near-death experience, or simply the fact that Owen Frost didn't seem to expect anything from her. He didn't ask probing questions or make unwanted advances. He simply existed in his space, solid and steady as the house around them. "Storm's getting worse," Owen observed, looking out the window. "We'll be lucky if it lets up by tomorrow night." Natalie followed his gaze. The world beyond the window was completely white, the snow falling so thick and fast that she couldn't see the barn anymore. A day ago, she would have been frantic at the delay. But now, with warmth seeping back into her bones and hot food in her belly, she found she couldn't quite muster the energy for panic. "I've never seen snow like this," she said. "Where I grew up in Ohio, we had winter storms, but nothing like this in October." "It's not natural," Owen agreed. "Old-timers in town are calling it an act of God, punishment for our sins or some such." He shook his head. I figure it's just weather. Sometimes nature does strange things." "Do you believe in God?" Natalie asked, then immediately wondered why she'd ask such a personal question. Owen considered it for a moment. "I believe in something. Not sure if it's the God the preacher talks about every Sunday, but something. The world's too complicated to be random, I think. Too much beauty in it." He glanced at her. "I used to," Natalie said. "When I was younger, I believed in all of it. A loving God, answered prayers, divine plans. But then I married Thomas and spent 3 years praying for things to get better, and they never did. So now I'm not sure what I believe anymore." "Maybe the answer to your prayers is sitting right here in this house," Owen said. "Maybe God sent a blizzard to get you away from a bad situation." Natalie laughed, a genuine sound that surprised her. "That's an awfully roundabout way to help someone." "Never said God was direct," Owen replied with a grin. They talked late into the evening, the conversation flowing easily despite the strangeness of their situation. Owen told her about his ranch, how he'd bought it 3 years ago with money saved from years of working cattle drives. The drought last summer had been devastating, wiping out half his herd and leaving him barely scraping by. But he loved this land, loved the work, loved the independence of answering to no one but himself. Natalie found herself telling him things she'd never told anyone. About growing up the youngest of 5 children in a small town in Ohio. About her father's death when she was 16, and how her mother had pushed her toward marriage with Thomas because he had money and prospects. About the slow realization that she'd traded one kind of prison for another. "I was 19 when we married," she said, staring into the fire. "I thought I knew what I wanted. Security, respectability, a comfortable life. And Thomas offered all of that. He was charming when he wanted to be, and I was too young to see past the charm to what lay beneath." "What did lie beneath?" Owen asked quietly. Natalie was silent for a long moment. "Control," she said finally. "He needed to control everything. What I wore, who I spoke to, how I spent every minute of my day. At first I thought he was just protective, but it got worse over time. He'd go through my things, read my letters, interrogate me about every conversation I had. If I questioned him, he'd tell me I was being ungrateful, that he'd saved me from poverty and I owed him my obedience." "That's not a marriage," Owen said, anger threading through his voice. "That's imprisonment." "I know that now," Natalie said. "It took me too long to figure it out. But 3 months ago, I finally admitted to myself that if I stayed, I'd lose whatever was left of who I used to be. So I started planning. I took a job at a boarding house without telling Thomas, saved every penny, and when he went to Sacramento on business last week, I left." "Good," Owen said firmly. "You did the right thing." "Did I?" Natalie met his eyes. "I broke a vow. In the eyes of the church, in the eyes of the law, I'm still his wife. He could force me to come back." "Not if you don't want to go," Owen said. "This is the frontier, Natalie. Things are different out here. People come to the Arizona territory to start over all the time." No one's going to force you back into a bad situation. Thomas has money, Natalie said. Money buys a lot of cooperation. Not from everyone. Owen stood and added another log to the fire. You're safe here, for as long as you need to stay. The weight of his words settled over her like a blanket. For the first time since she'd left San Francisco, Natalie felt like maybe, just maybe, she could actually escape. That her desperate flight might not end with Thomas dragging her back in chains. "Thank you," she said, and the words felt inadequate for what she wanted to express. "I don't know how to repay your kindness." "Don't need repayment," Owen said. "Just do better than you're giving yourself credit for. Takes courage to leave everything you know and start over. That's worth respecting." That night, Natalie lay in the narrow bed in Owen's spare room and listened to the wind howl outside. The blankets were heavy and warm, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt safe. It was a strange feeling, being safe in the house of a man she'd known for less than a day. But Owen Frost had a quiet steadiness about him that put her at ease. She thought about Thomas, probably pacing his study in San Francisco, composing angry telegrams and making plans to track her down. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only a distant kind of resignation. Whatever happened next, she'd made her choice. She was done being controlled. The next morning, Natalie woke to the smell of coffee and bacon. She dressed in her own clothes, now dry and warm from hanging near the fire all night, and emerged from the bedroom to find Owen at the stove. "Morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder. "Storm's still going strong. We're not going anywhere today." Natalie went to the window and stared in amazement. Snow had piled up against the house in drifts that reached halfway up the walls. The entire world was white and wild and utterly impassable. "I've never seen anything like this," she breathed. "Me neither," Owen admitted. "We'll need to dig out the barn door so I can feed the animals. Other than that, we're stuck inside." They ate breakfast together, and then Owen bundled up to venture out to the barn. Natalie watched him go, marveling at how he leaned into the wind like it was nothing more than a mild inconvenience. He was gone for over an hour, and when he came back inside, he was covered in snow and breathing hard. "Your mare's doing fine," he reported, stomping snow off his boots. "So are my horses and the cattle in the near pasture. The ones farther out, though, I'm worried about them." "Is there anything you can do?" Natalie asked. Owen shook his head. "Not until this storm clears. I just have to hope they had the sense to find shelter in the canyons." The day passed slowly. Owen had work to do even trapped inside, tending to the fire, checking supplies, making repairs to tack and tools. Natalie offered to help, and together they fell into an easy rhythm. She mended a torn saddle blanket while he worked on a broken bridle. They talked, sometimes about important things and sometimes about nothing at all. "Tell me about the ranch," Natalie said at one point. "What made you want to do this?" Owen looked up from the leather he was working. "Freedom, I guess. I worked for other people most of my life. My father died when I was 14, and I had to help support my mother and sisters. Worked on cattle drives, hired out as a ranch hand, did whatever paid. It was good, honest work, but it was always at someone else's command. When I finally saved up enough to buy my own place, it felt like breathing for the first time." "I understand that," Natalie said softly. "The wanting to breathe." "Yeah," Owen said, his eyes meeting hers. "I figured you might." By evening, the storm showed no signs of letting up. If anything, it seemed to be getting worse, the wind battering the house with renewed fury. Owen made dinner, a simple meal of beans and cornbread, and they ate by lamplight while the windows rattled. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" Natalie asked. "Living by yourself, I mean." Owen considered the question. "Sometimes. It's quiet, and quiet can be good, but too much quiet can make you forget how to talk to people. I go into town once a week or so, see folks, hear the news. That's usually enough. Have you ever thought about marrying?" The question was out before Natalie could stop it, and she felt her cheeks heat. "I'm sorry, that's too personal." "It's all right," Owen said. "And yeah, I've thought about it. Haven't found the right person, though. Most women around here want a man with more prospects than I can offer. And I'm not willing to marry just for the sake of not being alone. Seen too many people trapped in marriages they hate." "Like me," Natalie said. "Didn't say that. You didn't have to." She set down her fork. "You're right, though. Being lonely is better than being with the wrong person. At least when you're lonely, you still have yourself." That night, as Natalie lay in bed listening to the storm, she found herself thinking about Owen Frost, about the way he moved through the world with such quiet confidence, about the kindness in his eyes and the gentleness in his hands despite their obvious strength, about how safe she felt here in this small ranch house at the edge of nowhere. It was dangerous, these thoughts. She'd just escaped one man. She had no business thinking about another. And yet she couldn't help it. There was something about Owen that called to her, something that made her want to stay even when she knew she should run. The third day of the storm dawned gray and cold, but the snow had finally stopped falling. Owen went out early to assess the situation and came back looking grim. "Drifts are 6 feet high in places," he said. "Going to take days to dig out enough to make the road passable, and even then, you'll need your mare reshod before you can travel." Natalie should have been upset. Every day she stayed here was a day Thomas could be getting closer. But instead of fear, she felt an almost guilty sense of relief. "I see," she said carefully. "How long do you think before I can leave? Week, maybe. Assuming the weather holds and I can get you into town to see the blacksmith." A week. 7 more days in this house with Owen Frost. 7 more days of safety and warmth and conversations that made her feel like a real person instead of an object to be controlled. It should have felt like a prison. Instead, it felt like a gift. They fell into a routine over the next few days. Owen would rise early to tend to the animals and dig out pathways through the snow. Natalie would make breakfast and tidy the house, then spend the rest of the morning helping with whatever tasks needed doing. Afternoons they spent working side by side, and evenings they talked by the fire until the logs burned down to embers. Natalie learned more about Owen in those days than she'd learned about Thomas in 3 years of marriage. She learned that he'd been born in Texas, but moved to Arizona as a child when his father sought work in the silver mines. She learned that he'd taught himself to read from his mother's Bible and whatever books he could borrow. She learned that he'd once seen a mountain lion take down a bull elk and had been so awed by the beauty and brutality of it that he'd stood frozen for 10 minutes afterward. "My father used to say that the frontier made men hard," Owen told her one evening. "But I don't think that's true. I think it makes men honest. Out here, you can't fake who you are. The land sees right through you." "What does it see when it looks at you?" Natalie asked. Owen was quiet for a long time. "Someone trying to build something that'll last," he said finally. "Someone who wants to prove that you can make a good life out here if you're willing to work for it." "You're doing that," Natalie said. "You have done that. This ranch, everything you've built, it's remarkable." "It's barely surviving," Owen corrected, but not unkindly. "One good season and I'll be solid. One more bad season and I'll lose it all." "You won't lose it," Natalie said with a conviction that surprised her. "You're too stubborn for that." Owen laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Stubborn, huh? That's one word for it." "It's a compliment," Natalie insisted. "Stubborn means you don't give up when things get hard. That's an admirable quality, if you say so." Owen's eyes found hers across the firelight, and something passed between them, some unspoken acknowledgement of the connection growing between them. "You're pretty stubborn yourself, you know. Takes a special kind of determination to walk away from everything you know." "Or a special kind of desperation," Natalie said softly. "No," Owen said firmly. "Desperation makes people reckless. What you did was brave. There's a difference." Natalie felt tears prick at her eyes. No one had ever called her brave before. Foolish, yes. Ungrateful, certainly. But never brave. "Thank you," she whispered. On the 5th day, Owen announced that he thought the road might be clear enough for them to make it into town. Natalie's mare had been reshod with a spare shoe Owen kept in his barn, and the weather had warmed enough that the snow was beginning to melt. "I can take you into Tombstone tomorrow if you want," Owen said over breakfast. "Help you get settled somewhere safe." Natalie's stomach twisted. This was what she'd been waiting for, the chance to continue her journey, to truly disappear and start over. So why did the thought of leaving make her feel like she was about to lose something precious? "Tomorrow," she repeated. Yes, that would be good. But it didn't feel good. It felt like the end of something before it had even really begun. That evening, Natalie couldn't settle. She paced the small house, her mind racing. Tomorrow she'd leave this place and probably never see Owen Frost again. He'd go back to his solitary life on his struggling ranch, and she'd disappear into whatever new existence she could carve out for herself. It was the right thing to do, the smart thing, the safe thing. So why did it feel so wrong? "You all right?" Owen asked from where he sat mending a rope. "You're wearing a path in my floor." Natalie stopped pacing and turned to face him. "Can I ask you something? Anything? Why did you help me, really? You could have turned me away, let me take my chances with the storm. It would have been safer for you, less complicated. So why?" Owen set down the rope and met her gaze steadily. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And because I know what it's like to be desperate and alone and hoping someone will give a damn. When I was 16 and my father died, I thought the world was going to swallow us whole. But people helped us. Gave my mother work, made sure we had food, looked after my sisters when I was out working. They didn't do it because they expected anything in return. They did it because it was the right thing to do." He paused. "And because I took one look at you standing on my porch half frozen and thought you were the bravest person I'd ever seen." Natalie's breath caught in her throat. "Owen," she said, and his name felt like a prayer on her lips. He stood, crossing the small space between them in 3 strides. "I know you're leaving tomorrow," he said, his voice low and rough. "I know you need to keep moving to stay ahead of the man you're running from, but I need you to know something before you go." "What?" Natalie whispered. "These past few days, having you here, it's been the best thing that's happened to me in longer than I can remember. You make this place feel like a home instead of just a house. You make me remember why I wanted to build something in the first place." He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek in his calloused hand. "I know it's crazy. We barely know each other, but I think I'm falling in love with you, Natalie Owens." Tears spilled down Natalie's cheeks. "You can't," she said, even as she leaned into his touch. "I'm married. I'm running from a man who might come looking for me. I'm a mess, Owen. I'll only bring you trouble." "I don't care," Owen said. "I've lived a safe, careful life for 30 years, and where has it gotten me? Alone in a house on land that might not even be mine in a year. I'm tired of careful. I want real. I want you." "I want you too," Natalie admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "God help me, I do. But I'm so scared, Owen. Scared that Thomas will find me. Scared that I'll ruin your life. Scared that I don't know how to be loved without it coming with strings attached." "Then let me show you," Owen said, and he lowered his head to kiss her. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, a question waiting for an answer. Natalie answered by wrapping her arms around his neck, and kissing him back with all the longing and hope and desperate need she'd been holding inside. Owen's arms came around her, strong and sure, and she felt something inside her break open. Not break apart, but break free. 3 years of being told she was ungrateful, difficult, wrong, shattered under the simple truth of Owen's touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Natalie pressed her forehead to his chest. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to be with someone who doesn't want to control me." "We'll figure it out together," Owen said, his hand stroking through her hair. "Stay, Natalie. Stay here with me. I can't promise you an easy life, but I can promise you a free one. No one will control you here. You'll be your own person, making your own choices. And if one of those choices is to be with me, then I'll spend every day earning that choice." Natalie pulled back to look at him. "What about Thomas? He'll come looking eventually." "Let him come," Owen said, steel in his voice. "This is the frontier. Men who try to take what isn't theirs don't fare well out here. I won't let him hurt you. I swear it." Natalie wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that she could stay, that she could build a life here, that she could be happy. But hope was a dangerous thing for someone who'd had it beaten out of them too many times. "I need time," she said finally, "to think, to be sure." "Take all the time you need," Owen said, "but take it here. Don't leave tomorrow. Stay, give this a chance. Give us a chance." That night, Natalie lay awake for hours, her mind spinning. Everything logical told her to run, to get as far from Tombstone as possible, to never look back. But her heart, that treacherous thing she'd tried so hard to lock away, was screaming at her to stay, to take the risk. To trust that maybe, just maybe, Owen Frost was exactly what he seemed to be. A good man offering her a chance at real freedom. In the end, it wasn't logic or fear or even hope that made her decision. It was the simple fact that for the first time in 3 years, she wanted to stay somewhere. Not because she was trapped, but because she chose it. The next morning, she found Owen in the barn tending to the horses. He looked up when she entered, his expression carefully neutral, like he was bracing for bad news. "I've made a decision," Natalie said. Owen straightened, his whole body tense. "All right." "I'm staying," Natalie said, and watched as his face transformed with joy. "Not forever, not yet. But I'm staying long enough to see if this us is real, long enough to figure out who I am without Thomas defining me. Long enough to decide if I can build a life here." Owen crossed the barn in 3 long strides and swept her up in his arms, spinning her around until she laughed breathlessly. "You won't regret this," he promised, setting her down but not letting her go. "I'll make sure of it." "I know," Natalie said, and realized that she did know. For the first time in her life, she was making a choice based on what she wanted, not what someone else expected of her. And that alone made it the right choice. The weeks that followed were some of the happiest of Natalie's life. She and Owen fell into an easy partnership, working side by side during the day and talking late into the night by the fire. He taught her how to ride properly, how to tend cattle, how to read the weather in the shape of the clouds. She taught him how to make proper bread, how to sew neat stitches, how to laugh at himself when things went wrong. But more than that, Owen taught her what it felt like to be cherished instead of controlled. He asked her opinion on ranch decisions and actually listened to her answers. He encouraged her to go into town alone when she wanted, to make friends, to have her own life separate from his. He never questioned her comings and goings, never demanded to know every detail of her day, never made her feel like she owed him anything for the simple crime of existing. "I don't understand how you do it," Natalie said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert sky in shades of orange and gold. "How you just trust me to live my own life." Owen looked at her, genuinely puzzled. "What else would I do? You're a grown woman, Natalie." You don't need me to monitor your every move. Thomas would have, Natalie said. He'd have needed to know where I was going, who I'd be seeing when I'd be back. And if I was even 5 minutes late, there'd be consequences. Owen's jaw tightened. Thomas was a fool, he said flatly. You can't control someone into loving you. All you do is drive them away, which I guess is exactly what happened. I do love you, you know, Natalie said softly. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I had anything left to give, but you proved me wrong. Owen reached over and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. I love you too, more than I thought it was possible to love someone. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to appear. Natalie thought about Thomas, about San Francisco, about the life she'd left behind. It felt like it belonged to someone else now, some other Natalie who'd been too afraid to claim her own existence. But her peace was shattered 3 months after she'd arrived when a man rode up to the ranch one cold December morning. Natalie was hanging laundry when she heard the horse approaching, and something in the way the rider sat made her blood run cold. Thomas. She dropped the sheet she'd been hanging and ran for the house. Owen was inside, going over supply lists for the winter. He looked up when she burst through the door, his expression immediately alert. He's here, Natalie gasped. Thomas is here. Owen was on his feet in an instant. Get in the bedroom, he said, his voice calm but firm. Lock the door, don't come out until I tell you it's safe. Owen, no, he might hurt you, Natalie protested. He won't, Owen said. But I need you safe. Please, Natalie, trust me. Natalie hesitated, then nodded and fled to the bedroom. She locked the door and pressed her ear against it, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She heard the front door open, heard Owen's voice, steady and cold. You're on private property. State your business or leave. I'm looking for my wife. Thomas's voice, cultured and controlled even now. I have reason to believe she's here. Don't know anything about that, Owen said. But even if I did, seems to me a woman who runs from her husband has good reason. My wife is confused, Thomas said, and Natalie could hear the anger beneath his controlled tone. She's had some sort of nervous episode. I'm here to bring her home where she can be properly cared for. That's not how she tells it, Owen said. According to her, she left because you treated her like property instead of a person. She's been filling your head with lies, Thomas said. Natalie is prone to hysteria, to making up stories. Whatever she's told you, I can assure you it's not true. I believe her, Owen said flatly. And I'm telling you right now, she's not going anywhere she doesn't want to go. So unless you want trouble, I suggest you get back on your horse and ride out of here. There was a long, tense silence. Then Thomas spoke again, his voice dropping into a register that made Natalie's skin crawl. I could have you arrested for harboring my wife. Kidnapping, they'd call it. They'd call it giving shelter to someone in need, Owen countered. And good luck finding a sheriff in this territory who'll side with a fancy San Francisco businessman over a local rancher. This isn't California. We do things different out here. I will not leave without Natalie, Thomas said, and now the anger was clear in his voice. She belongs to me. She doesn't belong to anyone but herself, Owen said, and if you don't leave in the next 10 seconds, I'm going to make you leave. Your choice. Natalie heard movement, the sound of boots on the wooden floor. Her hand went to the doorknob, ready to unlock it and rush out before Owen got hurt defending her. But then she heard Thomas's voice retreating toward the door. This isn't over. I'll be back with the law. You do that, Owen said. Won't change anything. The door slammed. Natalie waited, barely breathing, until she heard Owen's voice. He's gone, Natalie. You can come out. She unlocked the door on shaking legs and stumbled out to find Owen standing at the window, watching Thomas ride away. He turned when he heard her and immediately crossed to her, pulling her into his arms. "You're all right," he said. "He's gone." "He'll come back," Natalie said, her voice muffled against Owen's chest. "He meant it. He'll get the sheriff or a marshal or someone who'll force me to go back." "No one's going to force you to do anything," Owen said firmly. He pulled back to look at her, his hands on her shoulders. "Listen to me. Thomas has no real claim on you out here. You want to know why? Because last week, while you were in town shopping, I went to see Judge Harwood." Natalie stared at him. "The judge? Why?" "To ask him about divorce law in the Arizona territory," Owen said. "Turns out it's a lot more progressive than back east. You can file for divorce on grounds of mental cruelty. Judge Harwood said based on what I told him, you'd have a strong case. He even drew up the papers for us." "You did that?" Natalie whispered. "Without telling me." "I wanted to surprise you," Owen said. "I was going to give you the papers for Christmas, but now seems like a better time." He crossed to a cabinet and pulled out a sheaf of legal documents. "All you have to do is sign these and file them with the court. 3 months later, you'll be legally divorced. Thomas won't have any claim on you." Natalie took the papers with trembling hands. "I can really do this. It's legal." "It's legal," Owen confirmed. "Judge Harwood guaranteed it. Said he's seen too many women trapped in bad marriages and he's glad the territory laws allow them a way out." Tears streamed down Natalie's face. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll sign them," Owen said. "Say you'll free yourself from him once and for all. And then, if you want, say you'll marry me instead." Natalie's head jerked up. "What?" Owen dropped to one knee, pulling a simple silver ring from his pocket. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months. But I also know that I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. I know that I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy. So will you marry me, Natalie? Will you be my wife, my partner, my equal in all things?" "Yes," Natalie said, the word coming out as a sob. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Owen slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that tasted of salt from her tears and hope for their future. When they finally broke apart, Natalie was laughing and crying at the same time. "I can't believe this is real," she said. "I can't believe I get to be this happy." "Believe it," Owen said, touching his forehead to hers. "This is your life now, our life, and it's going to be good, I promise you." They filed the divorce papers the next day. True to Owen's word, Judge Harwood was sympathetic and assured Natalie that her case was strong. Thomas tried to contest it, of course. He sent lawyers, threatened legal action, even attempted to have Owen arrested on false charges. But the frontier community rallied around them. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Bill Holcomb, made it clear that he had no patience for Eastern men trying to bully Arizona women. The local minister agreed to marry them as soon as the divorce was final, despite the scandal. Thomas made one more attempt to take Natalie back, showing up at the ranch with 2 hired men. Owen met them at the property line with Sheriff Holcomb and 3 neighboring ranchers, all of them armed and looking significantly less civilized than Thomas was used to dealing with. Thomas took one look at the assembled group and made the wise decision to leave Arizona and never return. 3 months and 2 days after she'd signed the divorce papers, Natalie Owens became Natalie Frost in a simple ceremony attended by everyone in town who'd supported her fight for freedom. She wore a simple blue dress and carried wildflowers that Owen had picked that morning. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up could probably be heard in the next county. That night, in the bedroom they now officially shared, Owen made love to his wife with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Later, wrapped in his arms, Natalie realized that for the first time in her life, she felt completely safe and completely free at the same time. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Owen asked, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her back. "For seeing me," Natalie said. "For saving me. For giving me a reason to stay when everything in me wanted to keep running." "You saved yourself," Owen said. "I just gave you a place to land." "We saved each other," Natalie corrected. "I was running from a prison and you were living in isolation. Now we both have something better." "Yeah," Owen agreed, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "We do." The years that followed were not always easy. The ranch had good seasons and bad seasons, times of plenty and times when they had to stretch every dollar until it screamed. But they faced everything together, as partners in the truest sense of the word. Natalie proved to have a head for numbers that Owen lacked, and she took over managing the ranch's finances. Within 2 years, she'd negotiated better prices for their cattle, found new markets for their goods, and put the ranch on solid financial footing. Owen handled the physical work of running the ranch, and together they built something that was truly theirs. Their first child, a son they named Michael, was born in the spring of 1878, 18 months after their wedding. Owen was so nervous during the birth that Doc Pritchard finally had to order him out of the room before he passed out. When Natalie finally called him back in and placed their son in his arms, Owen wept openly. "He's perfect," he said, staring down at the tiny red face. "He is," Natalie agreed, exhausted but radiant. "He's ours." 2 years later, twin daughters arrived, Mary and Ruth, followed 3 years after that by another son, James. The little ranch house that had once seemed so quiet was suddenly filled with the noise and chaos of children, and neither Owen nor Natalie would have had it any other way. Natalie threw herself into motherhood with the same determination she brought to everything else. But unlike her own mother, who had seen children as burdens to be married off as quickly as possible, Natalie cherished every moment with her babies. She sang to them, played with them, taught them to read from Owen's old Bible. And she made sure they understood from the earliest age that they were loved for exactly who they were, not who anyone expected them to be. Owen was a devoted father, spending hours teaching his children to ride, to work with animals, to understand the land. But he also taught them gentleness, showing his sons that strength didn't mean cruelty and his daughters that they could do anything their brothers could do. "I want them to grow up free," he told Natalie one evening as they watched their children play in the yard. "I want them to never know what it's like to feel trapped or controlled or small." "They won't," Natalie promised. "Not with us as their parents." Word of Thomas reached them occasionally over the years. He'd remarried, a young woman from a wealthy San Francisco family who, according to the society papers, was the perfect obedient wife. Natalie felt sorry for the new Mrs. O'Brien, but couldn't bring herself to care much beyond that. Thomas was part of a life she'd left behind, a ghost that had no power over her anymore. The town of Tombstone grew and changed around them. The silver mines that had brought so many people to the area began to play out, and folks started drifting away to other boom towns, other opportunities. But the Frost family stayed, their roots growing deep into the Arizona soil. On their 10th wedding,